What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more PGA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel. This time for the John Deere Classic. Welcome. In this video, we will give you the top 8 plays in our Occupy model, the data-driven model for the John Deere Classic for your DFS lineups. We will look at what industry projections are telling us who will be the highest-owned players in our golf tournament contest. Then we'll transition. We'll take a look at the betting markets, see if any movement in the betting markets this early in the week can give us some insight into how we can build our lineups. And we'll close out the show, as we always do, with some weather, some showdown notes, and we will build a lineup live here on the video. So make sure you stick around to the end for that. Welcome, I'm Brian Jester. I'm the co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. And as you see on screen here, it is round 1 of the Fantasy Golf World Championship, of which I am a qualifier. So drop some good lucks in the comments for me to advance out of round 1 this week. And I'm joined, like I always am, by our golf writer at OccupyFantasy.com. It is Niromada. Niro, what's up? How are you?
What's up, Ryan? John Deere Classic, one of my favorite weeks of the year, and that's not a joke because I love the weak field events more than I like the strong field events. And I'm excited for you. I'll be living vicariously through you at the Fantasy Golf World Championships. For those who don't know, it's a great format. It's very fun. It reminds me of the old school Survivor stuff that DraftKings used to do for the NCAA tournament. So the 300 people that qualify one week go from 300 to 150. So you basically have to play a cash game one week at the John Deere Classic, by the way, the weakest field event of the year. So that should be fun. And then you go from 150 to 50 week number 2. So you got to win like a triple up. So you got to win like a cash game, a triple up, and then you get like a 50-man GPP to try to win all the money up at the top. So I love that because it's kind of like all the different disciplines for that sport. So best of luck to you, Brian. We'll all be cheering for you.
And if I can somehow make that final of 50 players, it's live at TPC Twin Cities up in Minnesota. $1 million up for grabs to first place. So let's see if we can get past round 1. And the things we talk about in this video will help me create my lineup for this contest, as it will help you create your lineups for your contest. Before we get into the John Deere Classic, Niro, just a quick note. I want to talk about last week's Rocket Classic. We'd like to take a look back at the previous week's contest, previous week's events, to see if we can learn anything interesting to discuss. Real quick, it was a good week for the model and plug as far as making cuts, as far as top finishers. So shout out, pat on the back to both you and I. But what I wanted to talk about just really quickly is that late cut push that moved the cut from -7 down to -6. Normally, that's a good thing for us, but that altered drastically the 6 out of 6 lineups in all contests. Basically, the 6 out of 6 rate when it was -7 was 3%. That moved all the way up to 20% once all those chalkier guys made the cut at -6. So just a clear representation of the benefit of capitalizing or not capitalizing in this case when chalkier players are right around that cut line and miss it.
Yeah, first of all, second week in a row between the model and the plug that I think we've just been all over the top of the leaderboard and had very good cut rates. So like you said, kudos to us. We get it wrong enough, so when you get it right, you got to take the pat on the back. But yeah, I think it really shows. Cantlay and a bunch of other chalky guys were in that group at -6 that all got across, and it shows, like, especially at the high variance events, like the Rocket Classic last week, like the John Deere Classic this week. There are just really outsized benefits to fading chalk. And you don't have to fade them completely. You just have to be under the field on them. Like I had Cantlay in my cash game lineup, so like that helped my low risk stuff that he got across, but it hurt all my high risk stuff as I had a number of really good high risk lineups that had all 6 guys at -7 or better. And usually I'm rooting for the cut number to get worse to let more of my guys into the field. This was one of those times where I wanted it to stay at -7 to make those tournament rosters that I had with all 6 of those guys across have extra leverage. So I was very disappointed to see that it dropped to -6 so late in the day.
Naturally, the one week we did not want the cut to extend. It was the week where we already had guys across anyway. So now if we move forward to this week, the John Deere Classic, and as you mentioned, high variance event, you don't have to worry much if you're looking at the model for low-owned guys because we have a doozy of a model this week. So let's jump right into it. And Nero, as we've had a couple times so far this year, an absolute shocker surprise as the #1 player in our model this week. It is a 6K player. And again, whether or not you want to play this player or not is a representation of the quality of this event. It is Joseph Bramlett. Yes, the guy who has missed 3 straight missed cuts. Yes, the guy who has 2% projected ownership. Yes, the guy who has lost strokes on the greens each of his last 5 events. But Nero, I'll give you some behind the scenes model of what's going on here. He gets that ultra important putting regression tag that we've talked about many times on this show. Just because he's lost strokes on the green in 5 straight starts, our numbers indicate that he should be putting much better compared to his baseline average. So we're expecting regression there. And at this course, it's important to have good wedge play. It's important to be great off the tee on shorter courses. It's important to be good around the greens because even though it's a birdie fest, you need to break them. He needs to break any chances of breaking that momentum, saving bogeys around the green, saving pars, and Bramlett does that pretty well. Top 25 in this field. My question to you is, or maybe just my ask of you is to our audience, is let them know, what do we do with a 2% player with such a poor recent form, with a shaky set of statistics perhaps? How do we handle this type of player in our DFS portfolio this week?
Well, first of all, we play him. That's number one. So anyone that is that high up in the model gets automatically put into my player pool because I've just seen the model be right too many times when I would have said the model should be wrong. But I think the main takeaway would be you don't need to go crazy. He's projected for 2% ownership. 6% exposure in your player pool gets you 3x the field. 8% gets you 4x the field. That's way over the field. So a guy that was projected at 15% ownership to get 4x the field, you'd have to have 60% exposure to that guy. So you can have 4x the field of Bramlett at 8%. And, if he does, what's the most likely outcome? That he misses the cut. He doesn't really hurt you that bad at all. But you're getting, we say it here in this video number of times, we're always looking for reasons to play low owned players. This is a reason him sitting at the top of the model to play a low owned player. Now, I can give you some anecdotal evidence that would tell you he's an even worse play because he's missed 5 straight cuts at this event. In fact, he's played here 5 times, missed the cut all 5 times. But the flip side is that Bramlett does very good in low scoring events. And prior to the 3 straight miscuts that he's had, he was 13th at the Myrtle Beach Classic, and go back another 5 weeks and he was third at the Puerto Rico Open. And that goes with 22nd at the Panama, 29th at the Argentina Open on the Corn Ferry. The point is, when Bramlett does actually get across the line, he's got upside and he's not afraid to get up into the top 20, into the top 15, even top 10, top 5. Him getting across the cut line is a win. And so to have that extra upside, he gets in the top 20, that's a GPP winning addition to your lineup right there at that price and ownership combination.
Yeah, and I will say he hasn't made the cut here at this event, but if I'm not mistaken, it is one of the least correlated courses in terms of course history. So
Yes, it
it,
is.
so at least we can lean on that in the model ranking here as well. And again, you spoke to exposure for your lineups. And again, if you're the type of person that makes one lineup, that's a tough decision to be made. Do you want to use Bramlett as your one low end guy and your one bullet for the entire week? We're going to need some more information. And by Wednesday night, we'll have more information at our fingertips if we want to make that decision. If you're making 3 lineups, I would definitely put him in one lineup, 1 out of 3, and you can certainly make some moves with that. So, Nero, let's move on here. A player that we might have expected here is Siwoo Kim at number 2 in the model, and number 3 in the model is Chris Kirk after his heartbreak, who I lost an outright bet last week after taking your advice. You wrote Chris Kirk up in the plug. I said, let me throw an outright bet on Chris Kirk. Naturally missed a 4-footer in a playoff to dash those dreams. But either way, Siwoo and Chris Kirk, number 2 and number 3 in the model this week.
Yeah, not super surprising. I know Siwoo has had some back problems. Obviously, that type of stuff is not reflected in the model. He did make the cut last week, but he was not very good on the weekend. So, slight bit of hesitation with Siwoo just because of that subjective data. Otherwise, I would say he's a great play this week. So is Chris Kirk, who drove a dagger through my heart and yours when he missed that 9-footer to win on the first playoff hole. But Kirk is actually perfect for this course. He can go really low. We saw it last week. Putter gets extremely warm, and he's a great approach player. So I think there's a lot to like about both of them. I personally will be heavier on Kirk just because I have some nagging injury concerns on Siwoo, but I will absolutely have exposure to Siwoo unless, like you said, I get some more information in the press conference notes or something like that that we see that he's still dealing with that back injury. Then maybe I'll back off even further.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and that's the type of information that we look from you, Niromada, during these weeks. And again, maybe we'll look into the betting markets too, and see if he gets
Yes.
any moves, and if we see his odds drifting, maybe that's another reason to be cautious of playing Siwu this week. But if we see him getting bet up and his odds decreasing, his odds of winning the tournament and therefore increase according to sportsbooks, then maybe we can be a little more confident. So again, that's something we'll have to check back in Wednesday night for Siwoo Kim. Next, fourth and fifth in the model are two always occupy favorites. It is Lucas Glover and Michael Kim. And Nero, really, if you've been following Occupy for some time, it shouldn't be any shock that these guys are in the top 10, let alone the top 5 for the John Deere.
Yeah. So, Lucas Glover, especially in this field, this is about the weakest field event of the year. It's the weakest field event of the year that's not opposite another tournament. I'll tell you that. So, in comparison to this field, Lucas Glover, his career ceiling and career accomplishments are much higher than most of these players. So it's no surprise that he's in like the top 15-ish of like four of the five main metrics that we're using this week. So that's no surprise. Michael Kim also very good ball striking stats this year, which is why he keeps showing up near the top of the model. Very good in easy scoring conditions, and he also has won this event. In fact, he held the scoring record here until last year when that was taken away from him. So it was this event that Michael Kim won, and soon thereafter just went absolutely into the golfing wilderness and barely made a cut for like the next 2 years. And only recently has he recovered from that. But it was the win here at the John Deere that kicked that off. So we know he can handle the course.
The roller coaster that is golf, let alone professional golf. Finally, closing out the top 8 plays of our Occupy model this week. These are some interesting names of a variety of skill sets and experience levels. It is Mac Meisner, Kevin Roy, and Matt Kuchar. Again, just another example of how weak this field is. And Nero, I'll let you talk about all three of these guys, but I do want to point out Kevin Roy, who gets the positive putting variance tag in our model this week, and looked good last week, if I'm not mistaken, for a good while there. And he popped me last week. I didn't end up playing him. I forgot about it by Wednesday night, but he took a massive move at one of the sports books that we monitor. And anytime someone like Kevin Roy or anyone of that name level gets a massive move like that, it always calls you to perk your ears up a little bit. So maybe we can ride some of that momentum of his big move last week into this week. So talk to me about Meisner, Roy, and Cooch.
Yeah, so Meisner Roy would be Corn Ferry graduates who are, kind of in their first year on the tour, first year trying to get established, we'll say, on the tour. If you look at Roy, I think to your point, Brian, eighth last week, 18th at the Canadian Open before that, then 46th, 54th, and then 15th at the Byron Nelson, sixth back at that Puerto Rico Open back in March. But, what is that? Three top 20 finishes in his last five starts and no missed cuts. It's pretty good for his price point and his projected ownership. Add in the high model score there, and I think that's someone that we can absolutely make sure that we get over the field on compared to everyone else in our lineups. Meisner, very good wedge player, so I shouldn't be surprised to see him up near the top here. And Kuchar, also another like very good wedge player, which means that he gets a lot of bumps for the short course metrics. Very good around the green. He did miss the cut last week, so I would have liked to have seen him make the cut. But again, these are the types of events where you don't have to be in the best of form. One good shot, one good swing at an event like this, and all of a sudden you're right back to where you were before because the course does not exact huge penalties for misstruck shots. So I don't care as much in a week like this about having like really strong current form or really strong course history. Those two things just don't matter to me as much this week as they usually would.
And if we want to feel just a little bit better about Cooch, shot 4 under last week, right? Not like he missed a cut by 8 strokes. So had some semblance of a game last week, so maybe something he can build on for this week at the John Deere Classic. Now, that's the top 8 in our model. Let's look at what industry projections are telling us. As we say on the show every week, if you've been watching every week, you know what this segment is. If you're new, basically we look at PGA industry DFS projections, not our projections, projections in the industry. And typically these projections can tell us which golfers will be higher owned in our small field tournament lineups, our high dollar tournament lineups, our cash game lineups, anything $3 or more of an entry fee that pros can enter. And so if you're playing less than $3, you can just kind of play a lot of these guys anyways. But if you're playing $3 or higher, or for me this week when I'm playing round 1 of the Golf World Championship, I need to be especially cognizant of these guys' ownership. So Nero, looking at the projections this week, what are we expecting? Who are we expecting to be higher owned than they will be in large field GPPs?
Yeah, so on both sites, we've got 3 players, so both DraftKings and FanDuel. That's Ben Griffin, Ryan Gerard, and Lee Hodges. On DraftKings, we'll add Alex Smalley and Michael Kim to those 3, and again, Griffin, Gerard, and Hodges, mostly just mispriced, on both sites for their relative odds to win. Griffin, no surprise, because even though he's second in the price rank, he's the odds-on favorite. Like he's got lower odds than Jason Day, so no surprise to see him on this list. And then on FanDuel, adding to Griffin, Gerard, and Hodges, we'd add Lucas Glover, Rico Hoey, and Davis Thompson. So again, like Brian was saying, in lower stakes, lower risk. In smaller contests, lower risk contests. These are absolutely the type of guys we want to get. We want to get exposure to. Higher risk, bigger field contests. Still want to play these guys, but we need to be real cognizant of their ownership when we're putting together our lineups.
So let me ask you this, right? So in a field as sharp as the Fantasy Golf World Championship, and this is extremely niche and it won't help many of our viewers unless you're in the Golf World Championship this week, but how would you approach ownership, knowing that the guys you just listed, Griffin, Gerard, Hodges, Smalley, and Kim, especially on DraftKings, will be higher owned, much higher owned, I assume in 50% plus of lineups, and multiple people have multiple entries. I just have one entry. So how does that change your initial just gut thinking of how to approach a lineup?
Yeah, again, I think the main thing to not forget is you just need to get in the top half. So you just need to get in the top 150 out of that 300. So I would genuinely approach it like a cash game, which means that like someone like Ben Griffin, I'm probably just going to play him. I mean, what do you think Ben Griffin will be owned in that contest? 50%,
I think
maybe
higher.
more.
Yeah, I think higher.
60%. Like, I don't want to battle 60% of that field with probably the hottest player on tour right now, and certainly the player who's been playing the best out of anyone in this field over the last 2 months, and maybe even played his way into the Ryder Cup. Like, I don't want to battle that number of people by not having Ben Griffin. Like, just give me Ben Griffin. Maybe give me one of the other 2 of those common players, Gerard and Hodges. And then, for the other 4, I'm still going to play. I'm going to play the ownership game, but I'll let my opinions get a little bit more into how I choose those players. And when I'm putting together a cash lineup, what I'm really looking for is 2 to 3 players who give me like the highest floor that I think possible out of any 3-man combination in the entire field. And almost universally, those 3 players are going to have very high projected ownership. They should, by the way, like the math says, the market says. I mean, don't even if you don't believe in the math behind the stats, like the market tells you they should have that ownership. So I'm trying to lock in that floor with those 3 players. And then I'm just trying to get like the best next 3 that I can get, but I'm less worried about the ownership for those 3. I'm going to inevitably in cashing, especially for me, because I'm not just playing like the output of an optimizer. And I think that's probably to your advantage too, Brian, because I know you're not going to play the output of an optimizer, but you know that a whole lot of people are going to play the output of an optimizer or output of a projection system, and just whatever the optimal spits out for that, they're going to stuff it into this contest. And I think that's to your advantage. So I think it's okay to, play into your opinions, play into the Occupy model, play into something for like those last 2 picks on your cash team, and you've got your other 3 to 4 spots kind of covered with the rest of the field.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. I appreciate you throwing those ideas out at me. And like you said, to your point, I don't mind playing 60% Ben Griffin when someone who has such a high floor and ceiling is him. What I do have a problem with is playing someone, if someone like Gerard or Hodges gets up to 40, 50% owned, that feels bad. And I know that's where I can take advantage and potentially get an edge against such a sharp field. So you talked about the betting markets. We've talked about them so far. Let's get into it. We have one early trifecta play so far. A golfer whose odds to win have moved at all of the sharp sports books that we monitor. We have three more guys who have moved at multiple books. They haven't qualified as a trifecta play just yet. But again, we're going to monitor this throughout the entire week. By Wednesday night, Nero's going to put it in the daily plug at OccupyFantasy.com. I'll post it in our Discord, the final trifecta list. This is typically a very predictive list that ranges in ownership. You could have really low owned guys, you could have some high owned guys, but a lot of the low owned guys on the trifecta list every week really perform well for DFS. It's a really big game changer and a differentiator for your lineups. So, Nero, who is the trifecta play so far, and who are the other three guys that are close to meeting that threshold?
Yeah, so our standalone trifecta shot right now is Thurston Lawrence. I think that's because in his last four events, he was eighth at the Rocket Classic, 12th from nowhere at the U.S. Open, missed the cut at the KLM Open, and then was fourth at the Sudal Open. Both those events are on the DP World Tour. So if you don't know Lawrence, he last year and for his whole career was a DP World Tour player, qualified for the PGA Tour this year and has been trying to play on the PGA Tour with decidedly mixed results because before he was fourth at the Sudal Open, I'm going to have to hand count these. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of 12 missed cuts, going all the way back to the Dubai Desert Classic in the middle of January. So it goes from 10 of 12 missed cuts to a fourth missed cut, 12th and 8th. So I think people are, you're going to take a shot on that short-term form for a guy that's that cheap and has that low of ownership. And again, for the betting markets, like very weak field event, he has very appealing odds, lots of randomness. Take a shot on someone who's playing some great golf over the last month. So I think that explains Lawrence. And then our other three are Michael Thorbjornsen, Pot Geeter, who won last week, and then Austin Eckroat, who was one of the early, has been the early leader the last few weeks. Again, I don't love playing the players coming right off a win, especially the first win of their career. But Pot Geeter is so long, and he played really good golf last week. I definitely will have some exposure to him, not a ton. I don't even want to get into how much exposure I'm going to have to Michael Thorbjornsen, because everyone who reads the plug every week can just take a wild guess at what they think that is going to be. It's going to be extremely high. And yeah, so I think that's it for them. I will definitely have some Ekro too, but I'll be very curious to continue to watch his line movement up until Wednesday night.
And to your point about Lawrence, right? If you're new to golf, and if you're not new to golf, you just may be thinking like, how could someone like this just come out of nowhere, miss a billion cuts in a row, then all of a sudden get 12th at a major, at a really tough venue, and then battle be in the top 10 last week of another PGA Tour event. And we've talked about it before, right? These guys are professionals. They're really good. But sometimes, if you play golf, you know this, all it takes is like one swing thought or one swing change, bring their coach in, and all of a sudden they're back to what got them on the tour in the first place. So Nero, I'm not saying this is the case, right? But someone like Lawrence, maybe he saw his coach a month ago. Maybe he got some tips a month ago from whoever he works with, and now his swing is back. And all it takes is that comfort level and that mental stability to get back to playing good golf. And we've seen this a couple times throughout his career. So maybe he just goes through these ebbs and flows.
Yeah, he's definitely never been, even when he's on the European tour, he was never a like consistent player, but his upside is very high. He's got real high ceiling on the weeks that he's playing really well. And he's popped up before in majors for the last 2 years. So show up randomly in the top 10 through three rounds at like the Open Championship or something like that, and drops down, finishes 22nd. But he can get up there, and yeah, if we read in a few weeks that he saw his coach a month ago and tweaked a few things with the swing and got back to something that he used to do, like that would be the least surprising thing that I've ever read when you look at his results.
That is exactly right. All right, guys, let's close out the show with some weather and showdown related notes, and then we will build a lineup for you here live on screen as if we were entering a 500 player or less tournament on DraftKings. Nero, it looks pretty windy from the forecast that I saw across Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, not sure if this will give us any edge. Not sure if this will determine if we add any better win players in this really low level event. But are you seeing anything differently with the weather as of Tuesday afternoon?
No, I think the windiest day looks to be Saturday, and into Sunday morning, and then it kind of gets back to that 5 to 8 mile an hour consistent wind, gusting 10 to 15. And that's what we have pretty much all day Thursday, and then Sunday. So it's like if that Saturday was on Friday, then maybe I would be a little bit more interested in some of the players who have better win stats than some of the other guys. But I think right now what I'm seeing is 10 miles an hour, maybe for the consistent wind, gusting to 15 is what you're getting across Thursday and Friday. Now, it definitely looks windier Friday afternoon and Thursday afternoon. So I would use that information if I was making round one and two showdown lineups. Well, I'd want to make sure it stays that way, obviously. For the 4 day, I don't think so because, again, it looks heavier wind on the Thursday and the Friday afternoon. Now, it does look a little bit heavier on Friday afternoon than it does on Thursday afternoon, but I don't know that it's enough that would really influence me on my 4 day lineups. But I would absolutely be playing it in my showdowns.
And to that point, if you're not a member of OccupyFantasy.com, our Occupy model for PGA does have individual showdown rankings as well. And I can tell you, because of the method that we use, our rankings are almost always different from the field. So you don't have to do very much to get away from the high-owned players in showdown, which is always a good move. Golf is volatile enough as it is over 4 days. You can guess how volatile it is over a single day, and our model looks to take advantage of that. Again, as low as $7 a week, get you access to that model at OccupyFantasy.com. All right, Nir, let's build this lineup now. And I was talking to you before the show went live, and I was telling you that I had a really tough time with our normal method of finding the cheapest guy we feel comfortable using, finding multiple overlap plays, and then we keep in mind ownership as we build this lineup. For very obvious reasons, it's a very weak field, so it's tough to find cheap guys that we feel comfortable with. And as of Tuesday afternoon, there really isn't much overlap, right? Obviously, your daily plug is not out yet. We don't have an extensive list of betting market movers, but not a ton of overlap. So we're kind of going by the model, going by early research. So I will ask you instead, who is the cheapest guy you feel comfortable using in a single entry GPP tournament lineup?
Well, if the normal answer would be someone maybe like Austin Eckroat at 7K. We get some market. We're getting some market confirmation on him. You've got Lawrence at 7,300, Matt McCarty 7,200. These guys are relatively good values for their price. They're not consistent players, so you're not going to feel good about it. I think they would make they make the most sense. Now, for me personally, I have a little higher risk tolerance. I've got some preferences even lower, like Jackson Coyven at 6,800, the standout amateur, who is actually one of the unique amateurs. Most of the high-end amateur players, for the last couple years and into the future are that way because they just absolutely murder the golf ball, like pot gear style. Coyven is not that way. He's a throwback. And so he is actually like an outstanding wedge player and putter, which is, if we're looking for any standout characteristic this week, that is it. So, and this is an event where amateurs, first time pros, they have had tons of success at this event over the years. So, somebody like him, I'm absolutely not afraid to use. Even someone like Adam Hadwin, also at 6,800, or Carl Phillips at 6,800 would be players I'm not uncomfortable using. But if we stick to our rules where we're looking for overlaps and that kind of thing, I think Eckroat at 7K would be the player to start with.
You know what? I kind of want to go with Koivu because I penciled him down here in my notes as we were going
Okay.
before the show. I was looking at his odds, and One Sharp Sportsbook has his odds dramatically low. Like you look through the
Yeah,
6Ks,
that's
and,
no surprise.
yeah, and you're like, wow, okay.
Yeah, no surprise at all. Like he first of all, he's the number one ranked amateur in the world. He's possibly the best player in college golf right now. He's very, very good. That doesn't, again, he was also very, very good at the U.S. Open, and he missed the cut. So, he is who he is. He's a very young kid, and not super consistent. The thing that, like I said, though, that makes him stand out to me this week is that it's just rare that you have the type of player that has his profile at that high level of the amateur rankings, and it just so happens to fit very, very, very nicely with what usually works well at TPC or Deere Run for the John Deere Classic. So
All right, say less. We're using Jackson Cleveland, top ranked amateur, in our lineup. Cheapest player we got. Now, are we going all the way up to Ben Griffin? Are we doing hashtag balance build here? Because balance build does look pretty nice with the variety of guys that the model and the betting markets like in the 9Ks. I mean, I'm talking guys like Kirk, Glover, Thorbjornsen, Siwoo if we feel comfortable with him. We could fit multiple of those guys in. So I just knowing you, Nero, that's probably the route you'll want to go.
yeah, I think so. Let's I'd say this for the last ever since we've been doing this, we've been building for like a contest that's like less than 1,000 entries. Koiven, I think, is a starting point for a contest that's more than 1,000 entries. So let's build something that's for a little bit larger field type of contest, which means we'll take a few more chances. And one of those chances that a lot of people wouldn't think of is you just change your lineup construction. So have your construction be more balanced. Ignore some of those guys at the top of the pricing because they're going to be super popular just because they're at the top of the pricing in a very weak field event. So let's skip those guys.
All right, let's just put in these three guys since they have great model rankings and or some betting market moves and or they're one of Nero's golfing boyfriends. It's Thor Bjornsson, Lucas Glover, Chris Kirk. That leaves us
Perfect.
8,100 left per player to go with Jackson Quavone. So now we can go down with a 7K player, get an upper 8K guy. We can go two guys in that mid 8K range. We could go Michael Kim at 82 and somebody below him. Lots of ways to go here, Nero. And we haven't talked about many of these guys so far, which makes it difficult to fill out the rest of this lineup. So I'll defer to you if you want to go upper 8K, lower 7K, or two guys in that mid to low 8Ks.
Yeah, you could get Clanton in there, who also has a pretty good mile score. Another one of my golfing boyfriends. But I think we can leave him out
Or
because
we
I like the idea. Go
just
ahead.
really quickly, we could go Clanton and Kevin Roy, who we talked about as being a low owned guy who's been
Oh, I
popping.
didn't know that. I didn't know that fit. You shouldn't have told me that, Brian. So here's my number one request to the audience. Do not dupe this lineup. This lineup might win all the money this weekend. I did not know that that fit. Okay, so you got that one, but let's do one because I was going to use Michael Kim at 8,200.
Okay.
Okay, so that leaves us 8K left. We talked about Pot Geeter. Smalley was mentioned in the mispriced players. And you got Ricky at 8K. It's a higher risk. It's a higher risk lineup. I think I would take Smalley in that at 7,900 and call it good.
Yeah, knowing that Smalley will have elevated ownership, maybe not as much if it is a large field contest. We know that the industry projections drive ownership more so in smaller contests and higher dollar contests. So I'd feel comfortable here because he would end up at like 10 or 12% and maybe not 20 or 25%. Not to mention we have Koivu and a couple other guys plus a differentiated line of construction that I would make that totally fine. So I totally agree with you there, Nero. So that both those look pretty nice. If we can just get your
They
boys
do.
on board to play some golf this week, these lineups both look pretty good.
I'll have you know that Theo Bjornsson was three missed 5 footers away from winning the Rocket Classic outright and
Uh,
not needing to
yeah,
go
well
to a
aware.
playoff.
Also bet him too, so
Yeah,
very well aware.
yeah. Same. Guilty as charged on both counts. Chris Kirk and Theo Bjornsson.
Cool. Very good week last week. Love that. So, guys, that'll do it for this video. We appreciate you watching until the very end. If you're still here, make sure you subscribe to the channel where we do these golf videos every week, but only for another month or so until August starts. And then we transition all of our staff's resources into NFL, which, if you've been around, you know the success of our NFL advice here on the channel. So, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Give us a thumbs up. Drop your questions in the comments below. Drop good lucks for me in the Fantasy Golf World Championship. And again, all the content we've talked about, the daily plug, the occupied model, the betting market moves, Discord, lineup builder, all that is available on our website, again, for as low as $7 per week. So for Nero, I am Brian. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Good luck and enjoy the John Deere Classic.